we're here joined by Ginger Rothrock from HG Ventures, a venture capital firm investing in construction, chemicals, circular economy, and transport.
Yep.
Did I cover it all?
Totally.
Venture capital is a place to be. You get the chance to bet on the future while investing in entrepreneurs and also pressuring them to get the returns that you're seeking for your LPs and GPs. So tell us about how you balance those things, the financial aspects of being a venture capitalist, but also investing in the future.
Ooh, that's a great question. So I was an entrepreneur, so I've spent actually more time on the other side of the table than as a VC. But I do think the best VCs do both.
Yes.
So obviously investing in the future means making money. So like in the case of circularity and sustainability, it's a great story, but it also makes money. So you can be sustainable and be economical. You can be sustainable and, you know, solve big problems like labor shortages or supply chain resiliency or any of that kind of stuff. So I love that, like, yes and part of investing.
Tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you go from being an entrepreneur to a venture capitalist?
I started a company out of grad school in the nanotech space back in the early 2000s when that was a whole thing. And eventually...
Nerd alert.
I know. Total nerd. I'm a chemist, so I'm not a finance guy. Sorry, everyone. Didn't go to one of those big MBA schools. I have a PhD in chemistry, so super nerd on the venture capital scene. But ended up running a big lab doing things in like construction and materials and recycling and that kind of things. And I got a text one day from a guy who said, "You'd make a great venture capitalist. Come see what we're doing at the Heritage Group." And I was like, I actually love my job, but that sounds interesting. So I'm like, opportunity to do something a little bit more impactful than what I could do kind of on my own and help kind of the next generation of the future, as you said.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I know there's maybe a narrative out there that investors in this capitalist world are really like grinding the entrepreneurs to get the returns that you're looking for. Has that been your experience? Like, how do you nurture the entrepreneurs and guide them while also getting the returns?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. So we're corporate venture capital. So that's a little bit of a different, like the standard is you get money from people that have money and you get back more money, right? For us as a corporate venture capitalist, it's about, our thesis is if we can invest in companies we know because we know the markets, we can help them with all sorts of things, whether it's like physical assets or market knowledge, or even like, where do I find this thing in the supply chain? They can grow faster, risk is reduced, therefore we can get better returns. So I do think that's a really important part of it, and being on the corporate side of venture capital is pretty awesome for those reasons, especially in like the circular economy where it is hard tech. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, takes a lot of like physical assets in a lot of cases.
You and I were talking about evil.
Yeah.
Like, tell me.
Right.
Yeah. What, I mean, does that still work? Do evil investors still work?
Sometimes when people make money, people don't ask too many questions. But like on the corporate space, it's easy, right? We're trying to make investments that are strategic, but some corporates can make it so strategic it's like suffocating to the entrepreneur, right? So I come in, we're going to sit on the board, but we won't let you, work with our competitors, or we want to buy you. Therefore, we're motivated to like buy you at a lower price. And so the motivations don't get aligned. So you need to be really transparent when you're a corporate investor and set it up the right way so you don't get this like misalignment of incentives or like put your companies in pilot purgatory. You have to all be on the same page.
Yes. Pilot purgatory. I'm familiar with pilot purgatory.
I feel like that's a phrase that's been heard here at Circularity before,
yes.
for sure.
Everyone has it.
Well, maybe tell us about what's hot and what's not. Give us a sense of what you love investing in and maybe what we're not talking enough about.
Well, I went looking for, and we talked about this a little bit, water circularity. It is missing from this conference. Everyone is, really important, huge problems, right? On the stage tomorrow when I get the opportunity to be with the other entrepreneurs who are talking about textiles and plastics and food and ag and like all these really big problems. But what I'm seeing when I work with industrial, so we're a big industrial waste manager, companies like Invita, underneath the Heritage Group, I'm seeing all these really interesting issues with the water cycle. Everyone's like, carbon is the big thing here. But water cycle is this other really important like global cycle that's happening, and we're not talking about it as much. And there's a lot of water stress, which is leading to industrial risk. So why not, when you have these companies that are working in textiles, food and bev, microelectronics that are really water-centric and water necessary, there's a traditional linear economy there. Water comes in, they treat it, they do their thing in the process, and then they treat it and discharge it. Like, why not have it in the process and keep it in the process over time. That way we could potentially have facilities in places that were water stressed and reduce some of that. So definitely looking at technologies that are keeping water within a facility, either like with a novel membrane technology like Zwitterco that's in food and bev, trying to keep that, like get all the nasty meat products out of it, but keep the water nice so it can go back into the facility.
Yeah.
Or a company like Electromed that pulls metals out of water in microelectronics. So that's like acidic water that's etching the chip, and the metals can come out and you can reuse the metals, but then the water can go back into the process. I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, especially when you have these microelectronics facilities in like Arizona. Very water stressed regions. So
Fascinating.
I get super excited about water.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I actually host a podcast outside of this, and I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who've struggled with raising capital from the venture markets, and I feel like we've heard that it's cooled down a little bit. What's your take on what's going on and how entrepreneurs can stay hopeful, or what advice you might have if they need to go somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, the macro environment, you're right. It's a real challenge for folks right now. Funds aren't raising as much, and there's not as much to deploy. But I think the best founders are going back to basics, right? Everyone says there's a flight to quality, but the quality entrepreneurs are like figuring out what they can do with what they've got. Even the grants are going away, right? So people were like, oh, let's just go after grants. And some of that is uncertain today. And so there's a lot more partnerships with corporations these days, paid pilots. There's a lot more corporate investors that are getting involved. There's folks that are finding new and different ways to make their dollars last longer. Pilot purgatory is a problem, but in some ways, you know, the markets that we're in take a long time for adoption. So pulling back and maybe not spending as much money and really spending time with the customers that you have, we're seeing really great entrepreneurs make sure they have really good product market fit before they go back out to raise money, instead of, you know, kind of the burn and churn that we saw a couple of years ago.
And I guess maybe my final question is that entrepreneurs are still humans, and
sure.
we heard that you are really invested in the mental health of your entrepreneurs. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like as a chemist and former entrepreneur, I know how to support my startups doing things like, you know, scaling their businesses in different ways. But I didn't know anything about mental health. I knew it was a problem for myself, being stressed out. There's a lot of pressure there. So I took a mental health first aid class. So it's a lot like traditional first aid, where you're not like the doctor and you're not trying to prescribe or figure out what somebody has, but what do you do? Like, how do you recognize the symptoms when somebody's having a mental health challenge? And how do you take the first steps to make sure that they're okay, and then can find the help that they need? So just one tool in the toolkit of a venture capitalist, I think, of helping your portfolio companies.
Amazing. What a leader. Thank you, Ginger, so much for joining us on the live stream, and we hope to keep an eye on your portfolio.
And you can see more of Ginger tomorrow on the keynote stage.
Yeah.
Awesome.